Hey, how are you, everybody? This is Freddie Ewan, two-time GM of the year, 2022 Pan Am Cup champion, 2023 regular season champion, four-time playoff performer, and I have been waiting to get this guy on the TPFFKAL show, fantasy football show, for like almost 3 years now. It's the man, the legend, Mr. Neil Montes. Neil, coming from you from Austin, Texas. How are you today, brother?
Great, Freddie. Great. Thanks for having me on. Sorry that it's been a while. You're a hard man to catch, you know. It's like Joe Rogan, Freddie Ewan, like getting on is quite an honor.
I'm easy. I think when I first came out with this, you kept giving me advice like you only have time to watch 5 minutes, and then I tried to lower them a little bit, and you started to watch the show a little bit, and you've slowly become a fan, and I was badgering you all last year to become a guest, and you know, a couple seven places, so you weren't really kind of a big needed guest, but things have changed this year, haven't they?
Yeah, they have changed. And one of the things that I did was in watching your recordings, whenever you start to talk about players, I have to turn it off because I spent almost all of my FF or FAAB this year on a little quarterback from New Orleans called David Carr, who's never done anything.
He
Or
had a great
Derek
first
Carr.
two
Is it Derek
weeks.
Carr? David
Yeah.
Carr's retired.
He had a he had a great Saints looked good the first 2 weeks. I think they put up like 70 points.
Yeah, I thought Kubiak had unlocked that offense, but I don't know what happened.
Kamara's banged up. You went 12-2 this year. You have finished seventh place in the TPFFKL 3 straight years. What was the difference this year? 12-2, I think that might be the best overall record for all 4 years too. I think that's the best regular season record. I don't know. Rich, I know, had a really good record in the first year, but I don't think he went 12-2. I think he had the best overall record.
So I think it's a combination of a couple of things. One is I um committed to going out and getting the guys that I thought were going to be good in the draft. And I ended up only having to overpay for a couple, but I waited on a lot of big money guys and got a lot of guys around the middle of the draft that have performed pretty well. James Conner is one. He always gets hurt. He could get hurt in the semifinals this week, but he finally went a season without getting hurt. He's had a really solid season.
James Conner is probably the most underrated fantasy football player
Yeah, when
right
he's
now.
healthy, he's as solid as anybody. His floor is 10, 11, 12 points, and he could put up a 20 every once in a while.
The
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 other thing
two
that
guys.
helped me is just like Jimmy early on, and I think that Sean Poker has continued it. If you draft guys and can keep them at low values, Jamar Chase, Jalen Hurts, those type of guys. And so I have a couple of those guys that I've had now 2 or 3 years, and A Chain has had a good year. He's only been out a couple of weeks. Nico Collins was out a couple of weeks, but otherwise he's been very top, very close to the top of the wide receiver rankings.
Two players that I thought were really kind of like like they were either gonna do absolutely nothing during fantasy football or they were gonna blow up. And I think two guys that you have on your team that really blowed up was Neighbors and a Chain. Neighbors has been a little bit, I mean, he had a good game last week. But he really had that hot start, and a Chain has been really like, I mean, this guy can catch balls out of the backfield. Like, he's a PPR, half PPR, superstar for running backs.
Yes. You just imagine what Neighbors could do with a decent quarterback playing a
Oh,
decent
I
offense.
know,
You
I
know,
know. And I'm looking at your team right here too, and George Pickens has played really good. He was out, obviously this week. One guy who's came on really strong is Rico Dowell has come on really strong for the Dallas Cowboys these last couple weeks. You were at a little bit of a quarterback controversy because no one really thought this guy was just kind of, I don't know if he was drafted by you or if he was just like picked up on the waiver wire, but I mean this guy was not a quarterback one, is Jared Goff. And I mean this guy's had games where he's just been like completely crazy.
you're on TV, huh? My wife just walked across and was on TV for a little bit.
She
So
could
this
come
is
say
gonna be on
hi.
YouTube. Um, so yeah, it is interesting with Goff and Daniels, and I really liked Hurts more than Daniels when I was trading with Jimmy mid-season. But Jaden had a better end of season schedule. I think like Philly just played Pittsburgh. They've got another tough game coming up. And so I like Jaden's playoff schedule because at that point, I don't know, I was like 7-1 or something like that, and so I kind of pointed it towards that. Goff, I drafted Goff and the Legend of Atlanta. And I kept him 2 weeks, dropped him the third week, and the fourth week was when he put up like 50 points. And so Goff, he's got a solid floor right now, it looks like. So I don't know.
I mean, Goff has put up, 51 points versus Buffalo, 28 the week before, 20 the week before that. I had a bad game versus Indy, but 42 points before that. And I mean, this guy has put up some huge numbers. Um,
Yeah. I think the
let's
big
talk.
thing too, sorry to cut you off. I think the big thing with him, Freddie, is when they have a challenge, it's because like Indy was not a challenge. They blew him out and they go to the run automatically. But Buffalo, obviously, it's a game that he has to continue to throw, and they have the weapons to do that. So it makes a big difference.
And I think Detroit has, who does Detroit play this week? I think Detroit has that was a big win for Buffalo. But yeah,
That's
the
a tough
Detroit plays the
matchup.
Bears, so it's
Oh, it's the Bears. Okay.
yeah, I thought they were gonna playing the Packers, but I mean, divisional games. There's gonna be a lot of divisional games in Week 15. Let's talk about the TPFFKAL and some of these things that have happened. I'm gonna bring up the standings. You are from New Mexico. You and Jimmy are the only people. I've been to New Mexico a couple times, believe it or not, but I never knew anyone. It's just driving through and just, the only thing I ever know about New Mexico is what everyone else knows is, science teachers cook methamphetamine and,
Blue.
I'm sure you're sick and tired of hearing that. Like I'm from Jersey and all I hear about is The Sopranos and Jersey Shore. So,
I love that show. I think it was the best show on television the last 10, 15 years, or whatever. So yeah, it doesn't hurt my feelings. The pizza on the roof.
I thought it was a masterpiece and Better Call Saul too was almost just as good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a couple teams. This was, this guy I think is a very good, I think he's a very good GM. He won the Pantheon Cup the first year in the league. I think he had the most cap money going in. He spent a ton of cap money. Our commissioner, what I mean,
Yeah.
he's in a, he's got this bench right now, Kamara, Metcalf, Cook, Evans, Dobbins is doing something, Williams, Brian Robinson, Bijan Robinson, Tyreek, Jalen Hurts. I mean, a couple guys on this, Tyreek Hill had an awful year. Kamara was kind of hit or miss sometimes, had a big week early on. Kyron Williams, decent. Bijan had a decent, but what happened to Rich? I mean, that he's gonna spend years trying to get back into the thing now and doesn't even have an opportunity this year.
You know what I figured out? He starts fantasy leagues, wins the first year, then everybody else learns to play, and it's game over after that. This guillotine league that he launched, he won it in the first year. He
Right. He'll
yeah,
finish dead last
he
next
stole
year.
he stole Sean's uh early what's that guy's name that put up a goose egg this week?
Cooper
Uh,
Cup?
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Cup. He caught Cup was his lightning in a bottle, and drove him to the championship. But what does that have to do for your confidence? I mean, how must Rich be feeling right now?
I don't know. He can't be that happy.
No, he's an
I know
amazing restaurateur,
I
but I mean, fantasy football. I don't know.
he's gonna lose he's gonna lose a lot of qualm and just the people ahead of him, his buddy who we call Team B, Sean is in the playoffs playing the Monkeys right now. How about
I had one point about that, Freddie. Hasn't Sean now made the playoffs as much as Rich? He doesn't have a championship.
I think Sean has made the playoffs. He might have made it more than Rich. I know he made it last year. I don't know if I think he might have made it 3 out of 4 years.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Maybe we should call Rich's team the Red Sharks.
That's
Team
what
B
I'm
from now
thinking
on.
too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Sean doesn't get on and communicate enough, but and I guess I met him a couple years ago. We were all giving Rich trouble about Team B, and I always tell him that he hired some guy in the street to come beat Sean. But let's talk about the guy who hasn't won a Pantheon Cup, went to the Pantheon Cup the first year, and has been really a dominant team, and this year just totally fell off. That's the Donkey Dicks. I'm saying that right for you, Jimmy. I'm gonna give Jimmy a little props here. Jimmy is in the JGL where he had a phenomenal season. He spent a ton of money. He was the 1 seed. He beat me as the 8 seed. I spent about $200 and was free rolling for this thing. But he's all focused on this. But what happened to Jimmy this year? Do you think his players just caught up with him?
It hurts to say this because Jimmy's one of my very good friends. We watch out for each other, and our families are close. But this is going to unlock to what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. So Jimmy was under the delusion that Jalen Hurts was his son. He was sending him letters asking him for money. He somehow got what he thought was his cell phone, and it all kind of like peaked right about game 10 of last year of the NFL regular season. Hurts and the Eagles they just flew right into the gutter with Jimmy's team. His hopes, his dreams, everything gone. And so Hurts has now got a restraining order. We're trying to get some Jimmy medicated. I don't know if Jimmy could be fantasy relevant without Jalen Hurts. I really don't. But
he's
Jimmy, he's not your son. You know.
He's got Jalen in the JGL, and Jimmy's a Giants fan too, but he
Oh
is in
yeah.
love with Jalen Hurts.
I didn't know he had her. Oh, this it's starting again. All right, we're gonna have to have an intervention. Obviously, he's gonna be banging Rich's door down to get Hurts back in the off season. But that's what happened. You thought it was coaching issues. The team couldn't get along. No, it was that. It was Jimmy's pursuit of Hurts and
He
trying to get the blood
he
documents that it was
he
his
had
son.
some guys that just caught up with him. Travis Etienne had a horrible season, was just awful. Um,
Well,
you know,
there's that too, I guess.
Hurts is, Hurts has had a good year for a quarterback. He hasn't had that dominant years that he's had, before. And I think a lot of that has to do with Barkley's getting a lot of work and he's just not, passing the ball. He did have a good game yesterday. Um, and talking about these two guys right over here too, we have Champ, our man Champ gets the 6 seed. He might pull out the win tonight. It's gonna be tight, but Champ is another guy who's first time in the playoffs, had a bunch of money to spend, had a bunch of money. Um, you know, Champ always goes for the guys who make the headlines, like the Josh Allens and the Derrick Henrys, but it's worked out for him.
Yes. I think one of the things that he's done is I think he's done a little bit of study because he's a really smart guy.
Oh
Champ's a
yeah,
really
yes.
smart guy. And he just didn't care. And somehow, maybe it was you got under his skin and, like egged him on enough to, he's like, okay, like I'm actually going to focus on this and see what I can do. And obviously having 300 in salary cap helps, but yeah, he made the playoffs. I agreed with you. I think he started the right team yesterday. He had a couple of different decisions to make, but yeah, I thought he did a great job. And but you got to start Cup. Yeah, he puts up a goose egg, but that's fantasy football.
He can win this game, and he's got a great lineup, but he can win this game with Cooper Kupp putting up 0 points, David Montgomery putting up 5.5 points, and Derrick Henry putting up 6.7 points, and he can win this game.
Hey, we moved on to Champ, and I just had one other thing about Jimmy
Oh, Jimmy.
that I think should not be lost. I think the biggest challenge for him this year was he waited too long to trade one of those marquee quarterbacks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
absolutely.
he waited until he was out, and he could have traded him, 3 or 4 weeks earlier, gotten a one or two wide receiver or one or two running back, and that may have made the difference for him.
Absolutely. And you saw, JW, the J dot two quarterback strat, which, has worked out. You saw my boy Pat traded Godwin for Mayfield in week
Yeah,
3 or something. And Jimmy just kept holding on to these quarterbacks, and I guess he wanted the world. Jimmy usually wants the world for something, when he
Yeah,
wants a
I
trade,
mean,
he
he's
wants
an
the
accountant
world.
by trade. He's got to win those deals.
And it's and I don't know, it's like I always get, this league, with how the points are, getting 6 points for a passing touchdown, having a quarterback is important in this league. It's
Yeah.
obviously important to have a quarterback in this league, and it's more, you can have a great passing quarterback over a great running quarterback. Almost, it's almost better to have a great passing quarterback in this league. But him holding on to both these guys and they're both, great running and passing quarterbacks, both of them. But yeah, I agree what he was doing, holding on to those two so early, and not getting rid of them, while and what's his name? Godwin got hurt, obviously, but he was on a tear at the beginning of the season. It looked
Oh
like,
yeah.
really won that trade beforehand.
Hey
I want
Freddie, where we at on time?
we got about it's 3:45. We got about 5 minutes.
Okay, okay. Well, no, I just wanted to know how deep we were into this because if we go too long, we've got a lot of wisdom to share. But these guys will not watch it if we don't keep it succinct.
I got a couple more things I want to get to.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm gonna beat this guy up about it because I think that he is a phenomenal fantasy GM, and I kind of get the idea. But in the fantasy playoffs, what happens a lot is you look at your team and it's almost like, when you're playing in a big poker tournament, it's almost like you try to make some kind of move or try some kind of bluff that you rarely do or rarely use, or you try to change something up a little bit when the fantasy playoffs come along. Yesterday, Bowser is, in the fantasy playoffs. He puts Marvin Harrison Jr. on the bench, which I thought was a smart move. But putting Jamar Gibbs on the bench in a game where, it's got the highest over under of the year, Buffalo, Detroit, it lived up. They scored a ton of points in that game. I was trying to get players in that game everywhere. And to put Gibbs on the bench, I kind of get it because Charbonnet had such a big game last week. Um, but what do you think about that?
I I don't know how you sit. What is Gibbs now? Is he top 12, top 10?
I think Gibbs is actually, after yesterday's, top five running back.
But yeah, I don't know how you sit that guy and what you think is going to be a high scoring game. I mean, he's a keeper. You've had him a couple years. He's been consistent all season. Yeah, I think pure bows, just he outsmarted himself just a little bit there. I mean, even if Charbonnet is thought to get more because him and Montgomery share time, you got to dance with the ones that brought you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, looking at his team, he's got a scary lineup. He can still win tonight. I mean, he's got guys, this is going to come down to the wire tonight. He's got Justin Jefferson going and Brock Bowers, and I think he's behind by about 30, 31. Um, Kyler Murray, doesn't have that great of a quarterback in play, but it's going to be interesting. I want to play the guys on the other score, not these two teams, between Champ and Bowser, because they both have great squads. I hope that they ends up and starts playing you. Couple more things that I want to get to. I want to talk about Joe Moo really quick and the spirit animals.
Oh, the spirit animals.
Joe Moo just, I think he woke up one morning and said, you know what? I want to make the playoffs. I'm going to make a deep run. And he just started buying everyone up. And he was really out where you had to really go on a run to get there. And ended up losing the next week, and then he sold all the players again. I think he got pennies for the dollar for him almost. Um, I love Jomu. The strategy. I think that you can. I'm always in the thing that, like, if you can get through the first 7 games and you're in the top 5 or 6, then you can spend as much as you want. But I think he was kind of like iffy. But I like the idea. But when he found out he wasn't going to go to the playoffs and had to get rid of those guys so much, you use a different strategy than me, and you kind of have. I was looking. You have a lot of cap room next year too. You went 11-2 this year, so you have that really conservative strategy that seems like it worked, and people are following my strategy more right now. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. I think your strategy might work because even though you haven't made the playoffs, you've been very close to making the playoffs for 3 straight years.
So I think that there's multiple ways to do it, and I don't. Sean's another one. Sean doesn't make a bunch of off-season moves or a bunch of buys. and he's there. He's consistently in the playoffs. And so I'm just trying to find the right combination of not completely leveraging next year and being good this year. That's why I went out and got a quarterback, and then I added some bench additions late, instead of getting into a big bidding war for some of those marquee guys. It may not work out, but I'm still, I've got low cap guys. So some of them will be residual guys like Nico and A Chain, and even what I gave for the Giants wide receivers name slips my neighbors. That's a very viable keeper value, and then but still be able to be in it this year. I think that I have no problems with the self. Like you have mastered this, like selling next year's assets to play this year, and drafted with nothing. I think that some of these guys are going to hit the wall. But Joe going, I love it. It's TPFFKAL to the max. But I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's like freaking 2-7 or 2-6 or something like that. He's 4 games out. He's in 10th or whatever. Hasn't scored a ton of points. The team is not, it's not like a guy's coming back from injury or that type of thing. But I love it. He's going to have a recovery year, I think, too, like Rich, and it's going to sting a little more than like some of us that made the playoffs will. But yeah,
Joe,
it was an outlandish play, and I love it.
I think Joe had to win every game. Like he had to win every game to get in. Um, and he didn't even control his own destiny. But I loved it too. And
Yeah. Well, the points thing too. He was like, I'm gonna be, even if I finish 7th or 8th or whatever, I'm gonna be high points. If you looked at points at that point, both Champ, Rich, and Bowser were,
running away with it.
150 points ahead of him. And it's like, well, what if one of those guys falls to 6th? And that's
Right.
exactly what ended up happening.
Right.
2 of those guys actually fell out of the top 6. And so Rich ends up staying home. But yeah, it was great, really.
So we have I'm gonna leave you with this last question. We looks like we probably have, I think we have 3 candidates for I want to get in here and just 2 more questions. I want to just give a shout out to both James and Pat. They were at the bottom of the league this year, but they spent a ton of money. Devinders got a lot of money too. You think these guys? I think James is a really smart guy. We won the league last year. I think he's got a good shot to win. Again, he literally went from first to worst. Um, but and I think Pat has. I'm really proud of Pat actually because I thought Pat was a complete fucking idiot when he first came here, and now I think Pat's done a lot of good things. Bowing out, but he's done a lot of good things.
Yeah, he put up a lot of points. He just had some bad luck early on. The other thing is too is now when you look, obviously he didn't know that Godwin was going to go down, but if you look at that trade retrospectively, it's like, yeah, Godwin for Mayfield, that's fine because you're only getting another game out of Godwin or 2 games.
Yeah, it worked out for him. Yeah,
Yeah,
it worked out
and
for him,
then
and
I think James is a really smart guy, and I'll tell you what, he's right about if neither Bowser nor Champ wins the championship this year, it will prove how hard it is to have a big salary cap and still win the whole thing. Because he's been
absolutely.
saying that, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even count those guys in my. He will be right because he'll be one of now what 6 or 7 teams that was able to win it if one of those 2 guys can't win it.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So last question, I'm gonna leave you with this. There are 3 candidates pretty much for the GM of the year. It is you, myself, and it looks like our boy TEJI. Who are you voting for GM of the year?
Well, I'll tell you something before I answer that. You and I are the 2 weakest teams remaining in the playoffs, but you did
Absolutely.
once again make the playoffs. And yeah, my vote is for you. I think that it's like the West Coast offense, like what you've done with like selling next year's assets over and over and over again. Like you've spawned this whole a whole league of followers, and so I think they're gonna struggle with it in large part. But yeah, for that reason, I can't remember what you had, 75, $80 worth of cap or something like that, and came through, got number 2 and got a buy. So great
I
job.
I was looking at some of the moves I made, and I lucked out on a lot of things. I hit pay dirt with Mixon. Jan Reed is fall fell off completely off the map, but he was really good early. I got him for $1, I think. Love I had for $1. and just really grind it, and that's all it really is you got to grind out those first 7 games. And if you're there, then it's like spend, spend, spend. It's but you got to make moves on top of moves. Like I'm looking at the roster moves right now. I've made 58 roster moves. Um, and Champ has made 9. So just to give you a view, and the average looks like it's around like 25. Um, my vote for GM of the year is actually you because I think going 12-2, you had a phenomenal year. I think some of the guys, I was looking at your team and you don't really have one of those like you don't really have one of those like super superstars almost. You don't have a Saquon Barkley, you don't have a Derrick Henry, you don't have a Jamar Chase, but you've been able to take a lot of these players, a lot of these kind of like iffy players like a Chain and Neighbors and Collins and really get the most for them. Connor's another guy, and you've really been able to set your lineup really good each week, with even like Andrews and Tucker Craft. It seems like you've been right on with these moves, saying them each week, and you've held pat on these. You didn't make a big upgrade, but it's like I always had a lot of respect for you as a fantasy player. I think you just had a lot of bad luck these last 3 years, and finally it's paid off. But 11-2 is something to think about, and it's I mean, it's gonna the playoff again. I agree with you. I think we probably have the 2 worst teams on paper, but we do have a little bit of an advantage because we only got to win 2 games to win it all. And it's very hard to win 3 straight games, especially against good teams.
Right. I think that's definitely true. And I don't want to leave TEJI out here. He was the other one you mentioned. That guy's a force. Like he played a tremendous season. Um,
I
and I got to meet him too, so it's great. Yeah.
I haven't met him yet. I'm
He's
looking for
real.
yeah, but
He lives down the street from Rich's restaurant.
the dude's done, I mean, he's done some things. He's lost CMC for the year. He lost Puka forever, but he's made moves on moves. He's got, this guy, he's got Sincere McCormick starring tonight, and
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's done a lot of good for him. JSN's having a great year, but I mean, this dude has really made moves on moves, and you're right. He's a force to be reckoned with. He didn't spend a lot of cap money either, so I think he's going to be a challenge for years to come. And I'm glad both these guys are on the league now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Me too. Definitely.
awesome. Well, it was great to have you finally on the show, Neil.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate it. And one last thing, TPFFKAL, best fantasy football league in America.
Absolutely, and we
Yeah,
love you, Rich. Even though you didn't make the playoffs, we still love you, and
right.
you
That's
too,
right.
Jimmy. All
Yeah,
right, guys.
yeah.
Take
Take
care,
care,
Neil.
bud.
Thanks so much, bud.
Bye.